Welcome, everyone. Justin Burgess here. Today, I'm excited to have Hugh O'Toole with us. Hugh has spent most of his career in the retirement industry and has seen the fiduciary transformation up close. He's not just an expert in the fiduciary processes, he even teaches a course on it at Wake Forest University. As the CEO of Innovu, Hugh is all about changing how consultants work by focusing on a holistic approach to human capital risk management. Using data analytics, he helps identify solutions that save employers money and support employees. Hugh, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you became the CEO of Innovu.
Thanks, Justin. Sort of a circuitous route, actually. I spent about 5 years in healthcare to begin my career. Then my firm asked me to take over the retirement business. I was part of a seed change in the retirement industry that involved transparency, disclosure, data analytics. Along with a lot of good people around the country and great plan sponsors, we were able to cut out about 70% of the expense ratios that normal participants in America through 403Bs, 401Ks, 457s have where they save for their retirement. 70% of that expense ratio is a lot of money in their pocket versus the insurance companies, mutual funds, or banks. Candidly, I realized kind of in the 2015 range that the biggest burden to saving for your retirement was healthcare or pharma. So I went on this journey to look at the data and was there an opportunity to really work with great consultants, great advisors around the country with their clients to free that capital back up to inure to the plan sponsor and to the participant. And in my travels, after getting a patent around human capital risk management, I met a little firm out of Pittsburgh called Innovu. I became an investor, board member, and then the board asked me to start running the company in 2018. Ever since, I've been running around the country with 90 other people like a 32-year-old, even though I'm not. Really just having fun, trying to have the largest impact we can have to return capital back to the consumer.
Well, thank you. What I personally love about you is you've seen the fiduciary process for the last 25 years in the retirement industry, and now that's happening in the health space. So first question is, how do you see the role of data analytics evolving in the health insurance industry over the next few years?
Yeah. So really, as we combine the two, right, there's a process that every single plan sponsor working with their advisor needs to procure and hold things accountable. Working with prudent people like you, Justin, that employer is going to need to have an infrastructure to own their data. They're going to need prudent people that understand the business to help them explore the data. Where do the opportunities exist? Then they need to envision and model, if they made a change, what possibly would work better in the best interest of that participant. Then they're going to execute, right? And by the way, Justin, you and I, in a pre-meeting, we're talking about it. Execution does not necessarily mean total disruption. It just means looking at the programs that your carrier or PBM might offer that you're not taking advantage of, that are identified in the data that you have an opportunity to have an impact on expenses or outcomes. Implement those, measure. If they don't work, you might need to look outside of traditionally what you provided, but it's really just a process. And Innovu, really through technology, the use of data, transparency, benchmarking, is the infrastructure for that plan sponsor and that advisor to do the best job possible, both economically, but just as importantly, for the health of the underlying population.
Well, thank you. Look, wise mentor of mine said, you get hired now and disrupt later. And, my goal as a consultant is not to disrupt things immediately. It's to bring innovative strategies that are backed by data. Our goal is to foster sustainable, impactful changes over time. It's not trying to disrupt things immediately and change your plan. It's to use the data to make impactful decisions to get us over a long period of time. So next question is, traditionally insurance decisions have often been led by HR directors who bring a valuable employee focused perspective. Given that CFOs have a more data driven approach, as suggested by Myers Briggs and other personality tests, do you think
Mhm.
Innovu's platform can help integrate these two perspectives? And should CFOs play a larger role in the decision? And how can you can support that collaboration?
Yeah, I would say Innovu as a technology data play, yes. But I would also just say, Justin, it's part of your job, right? Like all of our jobs, when you know people in HR and you know CFOs, they actually tend to agree with each other. One might look at it finance down to result, the other one's looking at it participant impact to finances. But I think when you have data and you let the data get in the way of the decision making, when you're talking to HR people, you can show them in the data why they're right or wrong and what impact what they would like to do would have on both outcomes and costs. And the inverse is just as true. When you're working with data and you share with a CFO what impact it can have financially, you can then communicate in words exactly what the HR people are trying to affect as well. So I think this is one of those interesting times where we might speak different languages, finance or words, but they actually are perfectly aligned because when you look at healthcare data, somebody that gets the services they need is a lot more expensive than somebody that doesn't get the services they need.
Well, thank you. I mean, as a broker, I mean, we're trying to obviously please two sides of the table, but at the end of the day, we're all at the same, we're all in the same room. We're trying to accomplish the same thing, just in different words. Um, well, what do you think of the future of healthcare, and how is Innovu kind of shaping the future?
Yeah, I think we're just, again, the infrastructure, right? When you look at the data, at times we can reinforce the current delivery system as working in certain areas. We can also, over time, really identify things that are flat out broken, whether it's just due to incompetency. We're able to identify in the data areas that need serious attention from an expense standpoint, sometimes from a clinical standpoint, sometimes from a health and safety standpoint. So I would say that when you look at what happened in the retirement industry, it's actually repeating itself over the last 3 years. You almost have to, through the data, unbundle what's going on so that you can frame exactly what you're going to want to address in what order. And then you make sure that it's bundled and navigated so the end consumer can actually get what they need and their family need in order to be healthy. So, really, the use of technology is just to allow that to happen very fast so that really good, solid, fact based decisions can get made and then they get executed and measured for accountability's sake. Because something that works today doesn't mean in a year it's going to continue to work. So, you got to continue the process.
That's interesting. What are something as far as a success story or a case study that you're personally proud of? You're like, my team did that, and that was generated X.
Yeah. So, I kind of knew you were going to ask me something like that. I guess what I would say is, first of all, if you really break down what all of us do, so the technology, the data, the transparency with a really good advisor and the plan sponsor, including the entire delivery system, it really comes down to so what? Like, what is in the data that you should act upon? Now, what are you going to do about it? That's typically the plan sponsor and the advisor thinking about what would be comfortable for them to do, and then the measurement. So I'll just give you a classic example. Um, we do a lot with governmental entities, school districts with great advisors around the country. There was a program, Blue Cross was their current carrier. There's something called, we have 100 different insights in the technology in healthcare. One of them is called the J code analysis. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. It really just means where do you get an injectable drug that doesn't have to be done at a hospital. And in this population, most of those injectable drugs were being done outpatient at the hospital. We looked at the most expensive drugs in those injectable drugs. We worked with that Blues, the advisor did, to implement a program the Blues had that was not taken advantage of, to do pre-authorization, that upon renewal, those would go to a doctor's office or delivered at the home. That saved well over 50% of the cost. And the result of that for that school district was $1.5 million savings. That's really what the combination of technology, data, good advice, and a plan sponsor that's willing to take action. And it really created no disruption in the system. Because if you think about it, especially this actually went down during COVID, candidly, the last place you'd want to be is getting your injectable drug at a hospital. So it was safer, cheaper, and more convenient. That's what I mean by alignment. You're really looking for the opportunities that are kind of low-hanging fruit, but also are very rich fruit for both the plan sponsor and their participant.
That's, as a consultant, that would be to make my day, deliver that kind of news. And you got to think about it from my perspective too. Is like I can just walk into a situation, they're already self-funded, they're doing the right thing. They don't have you, and they find that. That's the part that it's like you could have been doing this all along. Well, that's very interesting. My last question is kind of personal, and I like asking this because it's just interesting. You know, looking back in your career, what would some advice for your younger self as you look at where you're at now? It's like, what have you done previously that got you to this point today?
Yeah, well, just a little background. I was a psych major that worked with juvenile delinquents in New York City out of college, and only got involved in business because I wanted to marry the girl I went to college with. Thank God, 35 years later, we're still married. So all good, but I'll give you the same advice I give to my adult children. God makes straight with crooked lines, right? So I think sometimes people get too locked into their plan. I think, like a good advisor, listening is the entire battle, and making sure you're actually doing something that's very logical and understandable. And then just watch where the market, your clients, your family want to take you, and then make the best possible decision, that next best possible decision, without worrying about the final outcome. I try to stress that to my kids, my employees, really anybody that will listen, because anxiety is the number one issue in America these days. And I think thinking you control every outcome leads to anxiety. So I think just breaking it down to the next simplest decision you can make is kind of the way I try to lead my life.
Well, that's beautiful. For me, it's got to be the give more than you receive. It's the 50 by
Amen.
49. It's
Yep.
And that's why I love doing these educational series, because if I touch one person, I'm happy. I don't need to touch 100 people. As long as I made one person's day and they found something informative out of it, then I'm happy. So, well, thank you, Hugh. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. But thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.